Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. We are live. I just moved everything on my desk. There we go. We're back. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm great. No purple beam in the sky tonight, unfortunately, but it's very festive in the area. There's a lot of traffic on the roadways, and I was driving in it for all of the first half, but apparently I didn't miss much.
Beamless in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, joining us as well is Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's like my intro gets spicier and spicier every time. I'm feeling good. Like Sean said, no beam, but we knew this streak wasn't going to last forever. The team was not going to go, 70 straight wins. So feeling all right.
I had them at 70 straight. I don't know what you're talking about.
Fair enough.
I'm actually more.
They should win 70 in a row.
There we go. Should. I'm curious if Malik Monk continues to rock the Band-Aid now that the winning streak has come to an end.
I guess
that's a good question.
He played very well, so I think he could still let it go or keep it on.
Yeah, you know what? He has played extremely well. Extremely well. Okay, let's get to the business stuff. We're doing a live show, of course. And if you're watching and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Also, if you're new to the show, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. This is, we've been doing this a long time and we're rolling. I'm still working on Off the Record with the Kings Beat Virtual Happy Hour Part 10, I believe. It's like we're so close to locking up a date and a guest, but the guest is a busy person. And so sometimes you got to be flexible with a guest, and then I'm not going to promote it until we know we got it nailed down. So that's coming. But outside of that, make sure you're jumping on board with the Kings Beat. You can see all that stuff down in the description. You can subscribe to the Kings Beat newsletter, and you can become a premium subscriber to get invites to those incredible happy hours that we do here on the Kings Beat. Outside of that, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We're only doing one show this week because we have like 3 games in 4 nights and Thanksgiving smack dab in the middle of those. So we're just going to do one show this week for our own sanity. And I think for all of yours out there as well. But it should be an interesting week. The Kings just lost after winning 7 straight. Let's just start there. Brenden, Kings dropped a tough one in Atlanta. This was like only their second back-to-back of the season. And I think that showed big time. They just did not have their legs.
Totally saw that. I think you saw it specifically that like Malik Monk and Trey Lyles were the 2 guys that probably look best. And I don't think it's a coincidence that those are the 2 guys that didn't see that much minutes last night against Memphis. Trey Lyles played 15, Malik Monk played 23 before he eventually got tossed in that one. So that's definitely what it looked like to me. They gave up nearly 80 points, I want to say it was, in that first half against Atlanta. And this was a good test for a Kings defense that hadn't been great coming into this road trip. And I thought that they had decent moments. The fourth quarter against Atlanta held them to 18 points. The third quarter in that Grizzlies game, they held them to 17. So they had their moments. They had chances to win this game in Atlanta and extend the streak to 8. But in the end, it kind of was their offense that, in my mind, came up a little bit short. 18 turnovers and just a little sloppy. They looked slow and looked like you're saying the second night of a back-to-back was impacting them.
Yeah, Sean, the turnovers, the missed opportunities down the stretch. I mean, Atlanta left the door open. And outside of, Trey deciding to shoot from like Florida and just hit one shot after another down the stretch, this actually felt like a game that they could steal, even though I don't think I ever once felt like they were going to win.
I didn't either. I was encouraged they got it down to 6, I think it was. Was that the closest they got? It was a 2-possession game, I know that. But I just didn't really feel that this team had the legs with them. And that was actually encouraging because, hey, back-to-backs are part of the NBA. But when you lose an hour and you have 3 games in 4 nights that hover around Thanksgiving, That's tough. These are three very worthy opponents, and I just felt like even for not having the legs, the ball movement was still there. Yeah, you turn the ball over a lot, but I actually thought their biggest Achilles heel on the offensive end was really just rushing and quick shooting the basketball. I think they kind of dug themselves a little bit of a hole and then played a little hero ball at times, especially down the stretch. But not too concerned with what I saw on the offensive end. It's this game was all defense and no legs, lack of defense and lack of legs, and it really doomed them.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that this was, for me, it was the first game that not only did I think De'Aaron Fox really struggle, but I think he actually forced things down the stretch that, like, he just didn't play to the strengths of the team. He tried to take over, and there was even the one point where he got a rebound late, and it was a close, they just missed a shot, but he got a rebound, went right back out to the three-point line, and standing right next to him, I think, was Kevin Huerter. And he took the shot himself and missed another three. I think 7 of 20 something from the field.
7 of 20, 1 of 5 from 3, 3 of 7 from the line.
Yeah, and he just didn't have it. And it's at certain games he's not going to have it, and that's the way the league goes. But up until this point, I thought that every time Fox had something that he was not doing well in a game, he tried to do something else to make up for it. And this was the first game where I thought, oh, he's just forcing it. This is really tough to watch. That he's trying to shoot himself out of it, and what he's doing is shooting himself shooting his team out of the game, as opposed to letting someone else try to get in there. Especially with Monk hitting, with some of their guys actually playing okay. That's kind of where I was at, and like at a certain point, like I think we knew this was coming. Like Fox was going to have a game like this, just like everyone else on that team has a bad game. I think we should probably take a step back, though. One loss, it clearly it makes for some good conversation here because we can point to some pluses and some minuses. But the Kings just put 7 straight wins up on the board. And I think that Mike Brown and this team have been absolutely tremendous. And I'll even say this, like De'Aaron Fox yesterday against Memphis was absolutely incredible. What are your guys' overall thoughts? Just maybe not on like every game specifically, but winning 7 straight and how this team has looked and how they've captured the imagination of the city of Sacramento.
I think it's even beyond that, James. I think they've captured the attention of the league by virtue of being one of the hottest teams in the league. I think the gimmicky stuff like the beam and the Band-Aid have played to their favor. De'Aaron Fox gets player of the week. This team has fun written all over it. And unfortunately, it's not on the defensive end. It's purely on the offensive end. But if anything, it's given them a swagger right now. And if they can hopefully sustain a little bit of this going forward, I think it'll go a long way with the team. It also helps that experiencing just a little bit of success given the 0-4 start. I know people don't like looking back at that 0-4 start, but it's part of their story. And to be able to turn things around so quickly is going to go a long way in helping this all the attention to detail that Mike Brown puts on this team, long practices, lots of teaching, and if this all wasn't working, those things are harder to stomach. And when you get the little taste of success, it shows a lot, and it helps the chemistry build. And now they can look around and say, no, we're really building something here, and here's the proof, and it's in the pudding. So I like the fact that Mike Brown keeps his foot on their neck when it comes to defense and things that they're trying to improve upon, and know that he's brought here for a reason to fix those problems. But also they've got that juice again, and I really like seeing that because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be an entertaining product, and people are paying hard-earned money to come out and see this team. And if you're not going to win, be entertaining, and hopefully you can be both. And right now they're being both.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that they have an identity, and I think that's one of the first steps to kind of building a consistent, capable winning team. As my TV gets super loud in the other room, and hopefully you guys can't hear
what's
that.
Funny, Brenden? Not to cut you off, but like you mentioned the identity. It's like this may not be the identity you want, but it is what it is. This is your identity. I completely agree with that. I think they need to embrace it.
What are you saying the identity is?
Well, the identity is just being a up-tempo, fast offensive basketball team that's hopefully working on defense. But you can hang your hat on scoring and having shooters and a new person every single night. Like, that's your identity. Lethal offensive system that you've built that's based on speed. And again, you may not want it to be that way, but I feel like you should embrace it. You can continue to try to become a better defensive basketball team. But in the meantime, this is what you are, and I think it's playing to your favor. You might as well embrace it.
I'm totally with you. 5 of their first 6 losses were games that they scored 113 or less, and that Memphis game was the first one they scored within that margin and won a game. And I thought it was actually a pretty big sign of growth for them to hold Memphis to 17 points in that third quarter after having a pretty poor first half defensively. And this is the first time also in this Atlanta game, like, they gave up, again, nearly 80 points in that first half. You hold Atlanta to 18 in the fourth quarter. You would think that's a recipe for success, but the offense didn't come together. But I actually thought both of these games were pretty encouraging and showed that they could win by playing solid defense and locking in on that. And specifically, Davion Mitchell was phenomenal in that game against the Grizzlies. I thought he had some really good moments against Trae Young, and he's come in and kind of changed the energy for the team. Defensively, they forced a lot of turnovers against Memphis. He's drawn offensive fouls. We saw him do it earlier in that San Antonio game during their home stretch. I thought he's been good, and I think that there have been some positives to take from these games just to see them winning in a different way like they did in Memphis.
Yeah, I would say this too. Like the Kings this season, there's only one game where they really didn't play well, and that was the Memphis game at home. They lost by 15. Outside of that, I don't think there's another game that's a double-figure loss.
Well, the Warriors game.
No.
You're talking about at home?
No, total. The Warriors game, they came back.
Yeah, I thought the Warriors, I think that was fool's gold.
I agree.
I thought they were trash.
I totally agree, but they also had 2 shots to tie the game in the final 2 minutes.
Right.
Like, and so the one game where you were kind of like, I don't know, outclassed was a Memphis game. And then you walk into Memphis, and sure, they're down Desmond Bane, but you walk into Memphis and you hand them a loss. And, again, we can analyze that game a lot. I mean, Ja Morant clearly didn't look like Ja Morant in the first half. Then he finishes like crazy. I mean, he was absolutely electric down the stretch. I don't know how he did that, because he was supposed to be out he was supposed to be week to week, and he didn't even miss a week. And all of a sudden he goes from out to doubtful to starting lineup within like a 24-hour stretch, which is just absolutely amazing. But I think that the Kings going into Memphis, no matter what, and I don't care how they won the game. Like, if you haven't watched Memphis Grizzlies play, then you wouldn't know that is how they play. They grind you all the way down to the final whistle. And if you think you've got them by 12 with 2 minutes left and you just get to coast home, no. You have to play out every possession. They foul you. They play hard defense. They're all over the place. Dylan Brooks is physical. Like, that whole entire team is built to, like, just not give in. And so to win a game like that, I think was huge. And to make it like the 7th win. I'll also say this, guys, like, going into this game, there's pressure. When you've won 7 in a row and all of a sudden you're tied for second in the Western Conference, like, this team has never faced pressure before. And all of a sudden there is pressure, and you got to go up against a good team, a team that can score, a team that's got an absolute elite scorer in Trae Young, but also a bunch of really solid pieces that for some reason just aren't working together. And even still, almost the same record as the Kings coming into the night. So I don't think there's any shame in losing to Atlanta, and I certainly think that there was a ton of positives to take away from the Grizzlies win. The Grizzlies win.
I think it goes to Sean's earlier point too, that teams aren't like sleeping on the Kings anymore. They're looking at that game and expecting a good matchup. Like, Atlanta's probably looking at this thinking, all right, let's end this ride that these Kings are on right now. And I thought that it was really encouraging the way that they were able to fight back. The first half shouldn't have been as bad as it was, but they really had a lot of chances to win this game in Atlanta. There was a lot of moments where they could have cut it. It seemed like they were floating around like an 8-point margin for a little while there and had a couple opportunities to cut it. There was I think beginning or end of the third, there's that 5-point play from Trae Young because De'Aaron apparently fouled them on that 3. And then there was a tech. There was, again, 18 turnovers. Like, they had a lot of opportunities to close this game out and or come back and make this a game. And I think that in itself is encouraging. I mean, like you said earlier, James, every single one of the games that the Kings have played so far this year has been close and competitive. And more often than not, they've come out on top. And I'm not really knocking them too much for this on a second night of a back-to-back.
Yeah, and I thought it was also interesting that you can have a game like that, and oftentimes it'll affect your shooting, and it didn't. I mean, they're still hovering around 50%. I thought the shooting was still relatively good. It was a lot of these little encouraging signs that if it's like, man, if you can look this bad in a game and still be right there with it, like you said, Brenden, that's incredibly encouraging. Because I still think we're waiting to see what that game looks like when everybody can't shoot the ball, and how do they change things up. I mean, we've seen them struggle from 3 and then continue to put shots up that way, but I'd like to see how they battle through some of these things, and because these are those signs of adversity. And yeah, I think it kind of starts with guys like Sabonis and Malik Monk. Malik Monk just continues to play well, and Sabonis is really throwing them on their back and leading the way. And I think that's one of the biggest changes from what you see earlier in the season, where he was really struggling to just kind of find his way and make sense of what he's supposed to be. And selfishly, I like seeing him more selfish. I've talked about that in the offseason, about wanting to see him be a 20-point scorer and incorporate that into the other things he does with the brilliant playmaking and rebounding. And I just think he's such a mismatch for so many teams when he's down low. And I want him to be more selfish and score the ball. And I think we're seeing a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and like, look, I'll bring up some of the numbers too. Like, the Kings turned the ball over a ton in the first quarter. They cleaned it up. And then in the fourth quarter, they had 6 turnovers. And like, I think the sign of like how bad those turnovers were is that I can remember almost every single one of them. And, like Harrison Barnes, Domantas Sabonis, Kevin Huerter, and De'Aaron Fox all had turnovers in that fourth quarter. If I'm not mistaken, Sabonis was an offensive foul. Fox went for a Hail Mary to Huerter and didn't get it there. Huerter just dropped it. Harrison Barnes again threw a Hail Mary, and then Terrence Davis had 2 egregious bad turnovers, and those are things that cost you. But I'd also point to the fact that that's exhaustion. That's the fourth quarter. You're trying to get through. I think this team was exhausted. I think that the last time they had a back-to-back, we saw the same exact thing. They looked exhausted, and I'm not going to say this team isn't in good shape, because I know they're in good shape, but I also think that they are expending an incredible amount of energy to win games, and they're putting it all out there, and to have to come back the next day and do it again might not be something that they are ready to do yet. It's part of the growth of this team. You can't just expect a team to learn how to win and then win every game from here on out. Sometimes they're going to take a step back. And I'll even add this, like, you got Memphis, now you lost to Atlanta. You're 1-1 on the road trip, but I think more than that, you left Sacramento at 9-6, and you've set yourself up to come back to Sacramento with a record above 500, even if you lose 2 games, because you got that first one. And, Boston is going to be a really tough game, but I think the Kings have put themselves in a position where you come back to Sacramento and try to get back on another run and try to get things rolling again the right way, if that's the way it goes. Because again, like going into Boston the day after Thanksgiving, and that's an offensive juggernaut just like the Kings are, but they actually have more of a defensive identity than the Kings do. It's not going to be easy.
Now, Boston's going to be a great test for them. And I think part of looking tired today against Atlanta is just they've almost grown a little bit of a heavy reliance on the starters recently. And then after that, it feels like Malik Monk. And then you get 15, 20 minutes from Trey Lyles and Davion Mitchell. But in that Memphis game, like Sabonis plays 37 minutes, Barnes plays 33, Fox plays 35, Huerter plays 33. And then that night they have to go fly to Atlanta, get there early the next day, and then try to get themselves going for that game. So I think it's typical stuff. I think the Boston game is going to be a great test for them, and another way that they can just continue to put themselves on the map, really. Like if they are able to win that game in Boston somehow, which I'm not going into it with all too many expectations. I would hope that they fight and the effort is there. But after that, I don't really know what else to expect, because I think Boston is a very well put together team, and the type of team that really probably should give the Kings a lot of troubles, considering how good their offense is and how much Sacramento struggled on the defensive end. But if they're somehow able to pull out that game, then the storyline that we're seeing growing around this Kings team will just continue to grow even more. And I think the national attention will keep riding in even more.
Sean shakes his head yes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's much I can add to that. I mean, there's, we talked about it last week, and this is one of the reasons that I got fans slapping my wrists for being too negative, is because you have a 3 and 4 nights. Those are not easy, and they're East Coast, and you're losing an hour, and you don't like to make excuses for a professional NBA team that has 5-star, 6-star accommodations and private jets and all that, but it doesn't matter. And you're in the cold and flu season. Wait till that starts coming up. You saw it on the broadcast tonight with Katie unable to go tonight. So it can be tough, but this is what they pay him for. I'm still very much encouraged by what I see, even with, as some people point out on the chat here, even with the tough road ahead for them. I mean, this is going to be fun. And I remember talking to some people last week. It's like they'd rather be on the road during the holidays than at home, and that's one of the things where we've seen when you're home for the holidays around Christmas time, it hasn't really bode well for Sacramento, and they're well aware of that, because they've got a lot of home games around Christmas time. So there's these little quirks in the schedule where you just start circling, and all of a sudden you start to expect things that may not go your way. So not too high, not too low, right?
Yeah, never too high, never too low. Okay, Sean brought up something there I think we'll touch on really quick. Number one, Katie was in Memphis. I'm not sure if she flew to Atlanta or not, but Katie has been sick as a dog for like the last week, and I was surprised she went on the trip. And it's tough. It's a grind, and she's got a little one, and little ones tend to bring stuff home. And so big shout out to Katie, who is struggling. She is not someone who likes to take a game off like myself, and she had to fly home and not finish out the road trip. We'll get to, so that led to some really weird stuff. I don't know if people watched it on the telecast, but I want to give a shout out to the Kings, the NBC sports team, who was able to put together a broadcast on the fly at the last second, where they had Kyle Draper in one state, Matt Barnes in another, a brand new pre and post game analyst in Deuce Mason, and I'm not gonna tear apart and critique horribly what I saw on the broadcast, but I will say this: Deuce was absolutely phenomenal on pre and post game. So hat tip to my guy, Deuce Mason. He was absolutely phenomenal. I thought Matt Barnes added a lot of really, really good insight. He does something that I'm not a fan of, and that's talk about we all the time, because Matt Barnes does not play for the Sacramento Kings, and it was too much. And I think normally during pre and post, I'm not a fan of that as well. But when he's on a broadcast and it's every single time, that became a little like, okay, what are we doing here? You're not going to be in the film session that they're having tomorrow. So that's kind of a strange way. So that's something that I think that they'll work through. But overall, look, when you have to do something like that on the fly, the mechanics of it are insane. And so big shout out to all the guys at NBC, which, I worked there for a long time. I'm friends with a lot of these guys. But to do something like that and to pull it off, I thought that they did a phenomenal job, and I hope that everyone enjoyed the broadcast, not even really understanding how difficult it is to do, a live game with people in two different states calling a game together. I mean, they patched it together pretty well, I thought.
Totally agreed. I thought it was great. Like you said, shout out to Deuce. He was looking sharp. I don't know if I've ever seen, you guys have been around Deuce longer than I have, but I don't know that I've seen Deuce in a suit and tie like that. And yeah, I thought that he did great. I thought the broadcast was solid, like you said, for putting it together last minute, and wishing the best for Katie, and hopefully she gets all healed up soon and can get back at it.
It's a next man up mentality, even in the broadcast world. So, no, and you know what? It's honestly one of the, I guess it's a shining light, or one of the little moments that came out of the COVID and pandemic part of it, because you had so many people that weren't traveling, and so people had to get creative on how to be able to still cover games and do that safely and do it in a way like this. And yeah, they were doing that when people couldn't go on the road, so they have the capability. They're utilizing it. It's fun to see people on the road again, but certainly you're gonna have your setbacks. So, and you know, I know people. You know, hopefully Katie's good to go, and I'm sure she will be. It's just a cold and flu season, like we talked about, but just listen to your body, man. Don't come to work sick.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And no, I like the Matt Barnes thing. Like, look, I thought he did a great job of calling a game, because that's not what he does. He's not someone who does analysis on a game. So just looking at the comment section here, but at the same time, there is a difference between, you know, like when you're part of the team, when you're not, and to me, that I don't love it. Outside of that, we do have Tuesday overreactions.
Oh,
Sean's favorite part of the show. Keegan Murray's struggling.
mm-hmm.
He's scuffling a bit, and I know a lot of people are like, "Hey, let's move him to the bench. Hey, let's do this, let's do that." I think at the end of the day, the Kings are trying to do everything they can, which includes feeding him in the post and trying to get him shots. Is he getting enough shots? Probably not. But at the same time, like, these are the growing pains that you expect from any normal rookie. The fact that he is a slightly older rookie at 22, the fact that he is the most NBA ready prospect that there is. I think you really do have to, like, remember that he's a rookie the whole time. And I mean, is there anything that like really for you guys stands out that there needs to be a concern about?
Not for me. I think if all of a sudden that composure goes away, or he doesn't start to treat games, or he looks like he's pressing, but he doesn't start to treat games the way that we've seen in previous weeks, or even going back into the preseason, that would alarm me. But I'm not seeing that. Like, I still think his approach and everything he wears, all his emotions, they all look the same. Teammates aren't concerned.
Emotions.
Coaching staff doesn't. Well, that's the thing. Like, can you see if all of a sudden you see him throw a basketball, or all of a sudden it looks different than what we see, and all the emotions, the emotionless Keegan Murray that we've come to love. So no, I'm not really concerned about it. It is somebody that is going to try to find his way, and I think, you know, part of a guy showing that he can be a capable ball player in this league, especially early, you see teams start to scout differently. You get a lot of tape on a guy, even at the NBA level, that's not at the college level anymore. So that's going to be a part of it, and I think he's going to be just fine.
I mean, they're asking a lot of him. I think it's all typical rookie stuff, but like, they start him this game on DeJounte Murray. We've seen him assigned to Donovan Mitchell. Like, they're asking a lot of him, and he said that, you know, the adjustment for him on offense is learning where his shots are, what shots to take and what shots not to take. And then defensively, I think he said the other day at practice earlier this week that that's been the biggest adjustment for him. And I thought even in the course of this Atlanta game that you saw some growth. Like, he was pretty bad to start, and I think was getting back cut and just had a couple moments, maybe difficulty fighting through screens, which is a lot to ask again of a guy 6'8", but I think they're trying to mold him into that and get him used to that role, even if he's maybe not great at it yet. But it's not an easy thing to learn. I think that there's obviously just typical NBA adjustments, but then I think that specifically this super fast-paced offense, and not just in the open court, but in the half court, with how much movement, how quick all the movement is just an adjustment period for Keegan Murray. I don't think there's anything to be worried about long term. I see why, the people got a taste of Murray playing really, really well at the start of the year. So then you hope that can continue. But this is typical rookie stuff. And I think if this was happening from the beginning of the year, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But because there was a little bit of an experience of him just being ready right away, maybe that set a little bit of unrealistic expectations. But I think this is typical. There's nothing to really worry about too much. I will say Jaden Ivey looked pretty good, but
Yeah,
I'm not
I
worried.
mean, yeah, I don't think that there's anything to worry about either. I think this is just like he's getting like weighed down by everything. He does have this stuff going off the court. I haven't checked in to see how that's going, and I'm not sure what's going on there as far as like the off the court stuff with his grandmother and all that. But at the same time, this is one of those things where like rookies always have ups and downs all throughout a season. And what you're hoping is that he has more like short bursts where he struggles and like where he hits a wall and he struggles for like 3-4 games and then he comes out of it, as opposed to something that drags out and starts pulling him down into like the muck. I think this was the first game where we started to see a lot of things start to snowball for him. So he missed a couple of shots early, then he had a turnover, then he forced something, and then next thing you know, he's picking up a couple of fouls. And so I thought it snowballed a little bit. But again, the Kings are in this mode where they've got to push him out there and then pull him back and push him out and pull him back and try to get him, comfortable and try to find ways to help him get through all of the chaos that is being a rookie while you're having stuff going on outside. I don't think it's anything to really worry about, but I also know that like I'm seeing it on social media where let's switch it out for this or that. And like, look, Malik Monk is playing really, really well, but Malik Monk is playing really well in his role. Keegan Murray has never been the fifth option. And I think it brings us to like really what's happened here is we've seen this crazy recovery of Harrison Barnes. And so you've got Fox rolling, you got Sabonis rolling, you've got Herter rolling. And for the first couple of games of the season, that Harrison Barnes is really struggling, and it opens an opportunity for Keegan to maybe step into like the fourth scorer role. Well, that's not the case anymore. Harrison Barnes coming into tonight, over his last 7 games, he's averaging 18.1, 6 rebounds a game, 2.3 assists. He's shooting 59.7% from the field and 44.4% from 3 on 3.9 attempts per game. So the point is that Harrison Barnes just decided to pop back up and come either the third or the fourth option. Look at Kevin Huerter's numbers. You've seen the same dip. You've seen a substantial dip in the last couple of games from Huerter as well, because all of a sudden you're battling between who's the third option with the starters, but that leaves Keegan Murray as a fifth option. And that kid hasn't been a fifth option probably his entire life. There's never been a moment where he's the fifth guy in a starting group, and that's just tough to adjust to.
It is, and I also wonder, I think defensively too, you're starting to see it from Keegan. I mean, not that anybody out there is an all-world defender, but he's certainly looking a little bit worse on that end than he has to start the season, I guess. And I'm not, I think so many times people just look at points and shooting and think that tells the story, and it really doesn't, because the fact of the matter is, even with the way this team is playing offensively, not everybody can be this like top level scorer and shooter. And I think that the role that you mentioned it, like with the way Harrison Barnes has kind of found a way to be impactful on the offensive end, and not look like a hole like it was earlier in this season. I don't think that that's had a negative effect on Keegan necessarily, but I do feel Keegan is looking a little bit unsure of himself in terms of when to fire. So again, I don't necessarily think it's a problem with Keegan. I think it's just a meshing, if you will, or teams scouting him differently, and he's just going to have to find his way through it. you mentioned James a minute ago about him having to guard a smaller player or a guard, and that's just the nature of this defense. Like, you're going to see bigs on guards a lot, and he had to do it. He got a learning experience with Steph Curry in San Francisco. I think it looked a little bit better. Is Brenden okay?
Brenden got delivered.
I got a beer delivered.
Delivery.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving. I'm the only one not drinking. You can see I'm at work. But I will be tonight, people of Midtown. But I will, look, it's just a matter of whether or not he can find the confidence. I think the defense will come, but he's going up against some really top tier teams right now, and these are upper echelon opponents. And I really feel like he'll find his way. It's going to be it's still a figuring out process for him. Everything is new to him, and every rookie's going through it. I mean, the Houston Rockets beat right now in Houston. You think they're probably freaking out over what they're seeing from Jabari Smith right now, and it's more from the offensive end because obviously that team is not good. But Keegan is going to be fine. Again, the thing that would concern me is if he is losing his composure, if he is losing his way, showing things that are outside of what we've come to know from Keegan Murray, and hearing teammates and coaches either on record or even in casual conversation voice concern. And we're not seeing that yet through, 17 games into the season?
Yeah, absolutely no long-term concerns. I think the defensive adjustments are typical, and I think offensively it's just a hard thing to get used to and comfortable in this offense. Like, all the guys that we see doing good are the high IQ guys, and I think that Keegan falls into that category. But when it comes to learning the NBA and becoming a high IQ NBA player compared to a high IQ college player, I think it's just a learning curve.
Yeah, I think so too. And the other thing I'm going to point out too is that Keegan played a lot of small forward off the bench, and all of a sudden he's playing a lot of power forward. And that doesn't seem like it should be that big of a deal, but it is. Like, he has to adjust to guys who go in the post and try to power through you versus guys that go on the outside and try to bring you away from the basket. Like, it's a never ending understanding. The things that I'm like, if I were to point to some things that I am slightly concerned, the defensive end, again, we thought he would take adjustments, and people who started saying that he's a lockdown defender and he's going to be a 1-4 defender, whoa. He was a solid defender at the college level. A lot of what he does translate. I was clear, he's not going to be a guy who blocks 1.9 shots per game. If he blocks 0.9 or 1, then you'd be fine with that. That's kind of who he will be at the next level. But to say he's a lockdown defender or all these things that we started seeing early on, as far as people who were jumping on the bandwagon, that's really not who he was at the college level. He was solid, and hopefully he'll be a solid team defender and solid everything else. But adjusting to the speed and quickness and everything else of the NBA level is crazy. What these guys can do, and I don't mean the top tier guys, even if you want to throw De'Aaron Fox there, just think of having to defend a guy like De'Aaron Fox. But every single one of these guys was the best player that ever played at their high school, or the best player, in the AAU circuit in their area. They're the best of the best of the best. Even the guys who are the 14th, 15th man on their bench, they're still really, really good players who know how to play. And the fact is that it takes a huge adjustment, and I don't think Keegan, there's anything to worry about at all. I think he'll be just fine. It's just going to take some time, and each step of the way he'll adjust, and there will be a point where he looks like the third scorer again, and there'll also be a point where it's okay, let's move him to the bench. We're going to go through this cycle 4 or 5 times during his rookie season because he's a rookie, and that's what happens.
Well, and he only shot the ball 5 times tonight, so I think now is when people will really go, okay, what's going on with him? If we already know you're still figuring out things defensively, but where are you offensively? I can't remember what he took in the Memphis game, but fortunately they're winning, so it hasn't really totally bit them. But you would like to see a little bit more from him on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, 1 of 8 in that Memphis game, 0 of 4 from 3. I think like Sean kind of mentioned a little bit there, I think the best part of this is that they are able to allow Keegan to have these growing pains and still pull out wins because they have enough other guys performing.
Yeah. Let's get to a couple of the guys that are performing outside of that. Malik Monk, we talked about a little bit. Malik Monk has just been like, he's so much fun, like on and off the court, and such a like good spirit to have around this team. I thought, again, if it wasn't for Malik Monk, they probably would have lost by 30 to Atlanta. And that would have been like the like giant like alarm bells sounding. But Malik Monk kept him in the game early, and then he kept him in the game late. And I just thought, again, it's almost become like commonplace for Malik Monk to really, even if he scores like 12 points, it's a really noisy 12 points. You know, he's one of those guys that nothing is subtle, where like Trey Lyles, on the other hand, he sneaks up on you and he puts up a big night. But I think we're starting to see the formation of this second unit, and like we can throw Chimezie Metu in this as well. Like these guys are starting to find sort of their role and their niche with the team. And sometimes Terrence Davis gets minutes, sometimes he doesn't. Davion Mitchell is having an impact in his own way. Again, like Chimezie, Trey, Malik. Like, where are you guys at with this group and how they're forming with that second unit?
I love it personally. I mean, I've liked everything I've seen from that second unit. I think for where it really hit me the most was in that game in San Francisco, the second game in San Francisco against the Warriors, because that game to me really showed me that they had not only a camaraderie, but the chemistry was there. Results were there. They played the role of this spark plug, and they were showing it on both ends of the floor. They were a big reason why on the defensive end you could literally point to examples of improved defensive ability. Now, granted, you saw Steph Curry do what he did, so when you read the storyline of that game, it's harder to find. But in moments, you were starting to see it, and that to me is kind of where I think this team really got kind of the rhythm going. It was because of that second unit in that game. And yeah, man, Malik Monk has just been, for a guy who started off a little wonky, as a lot of guys did on this team, he's been as big of a part of their turnaround. And I know De'Aaron was like, hey, the Band-Aid isn't why we're winning, and he doesn't like the Band-Aid, but I'm like, man, whatever it takes, dude, whatever it takes on a team like this. And if that means Malik Monk is, has the ultimate swagger and confidence in his game, keep it going. Because that's when I told him, I was like, it's kind of working. And I wasn't even necessarily referring to the winning streak when I told De'Aaron that. I was more referring to, look at how well Malik is playing. He's sizzling right now. This guy, not only, even when he doesn't shoot well, he's finding a way to impact the game. The turnovers can be a little bit, troublesome, but I don't even mind the turnovers because it shows the ability that they're trying to move the ball and trying to do it with that quick pace that Mike Brown is expecting. So, yeah. And even when Mike Brown talked about trying to, maybe I bring Malik Monk off the bench or into the starting lineup because I forget, it was Fox who had missed the game. And he didn't. He's like, I'm just going to keep with what's working. You know your role. You know what's expected. You're playing so well with those guys. And starting really doesn't matter on this team. And more times than not, he's closing out games. So, yeah, he's a big, big shining star in the positive column for them.
Yeah, Malik's been amazing. I mean, to Sean's point, the closing lineup more often than not feels like it's De'Aaron, Malik, Herter, Barnes, and Sabonis, and that's a credit to Monk. Like, Murray's had his struggles that we kind of outlined a little bit, but Monk's been phenomenal, man. Now, offensively, the guy can do everything. He's a 3-level scorer. We know what he brings from 3. His finishing is ridiculous. He's the only guy that mirrors De'Aaron in my mind, of these finishing through contact, on the way down, through so much physicality. He has these up and unders that are ridiculous. And he's going to throw it down on people any chance that he gets. And he's got a mid-range. His playmaking has been the clear thing that's surprised me. And maybe I didn't understand how good of a playmaker Malik was coming into this, but I think he's gotten so much opportunity to run that second unit. More often than not, if it's him and Davion as the backcourt, Malik is the one initiating the offense. And I think there's very good reason for that. After that on the bench, I think that Trey Lyles is a little up and down sometimes. Sometimes he's a little bit too much. He gives up too much on the defensive end for what he provides on offense. But then he has nights like he did today in Atlanta, where I thought he was phenomenal on really both ends of the floor. And he was really big at rebounding in that game. He had a couple loose balls that he ended up saving before they went out of bounds. One of them, I think he did end up throwing to Atlanta and maybe wasn't the best decision to save it, but his effort's been great. And then I think that Davion Mitchell is the other guy that stands out to me off the bench. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I think he's been a game changer for them defensively. And it's probably because he's the only guy you can really throw out there that is going to hound opposing initiators and really bother them and try to force some turnovers and be disruptive. But I thought that those three guys have been really good off the bench. Metu does what he does in the minutes that Sabonis is not out there and helps you survive, provides some vertical spacing on the offensive end. Defense gives a little bit more to be desired, but I think that their bench is coming along, and that's not even mentioning Terrence Davis, who could get spot minutes here and there. So I think the bench is coming along, but there is definitely, in my mind, like a heavy reliance on the starters as of late, but it's enough from the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is that when I look at both of these, like Trey Lyles stands out. When Trey Lyles has a good game, it's a really, really good game. Even like this, the loss to Atlanta, like he was the first guy who started to play well. He's the first guy who brought energy, and he went inside and had all of a sudden he feels like he can throw down a couple of poster dunks. I don't know what that's about. But I also know that certain games, like what we saw in Memphis, he's just not going to see the court that much. Like Mike's going to go like much heavier to Terrence Davis. So this is where we've talked about in the past of this like 9.5 man rotation. So it looks like 10 guys play, but realistically, one guy will play in the first half or one guy will play in the second half. If someone's playing well, they play more than the other guy. So it really is more of a 9-man rotation. And I mean, what that means for some of the other guys is that you're just never going to see the court. So I don't know what the stat is at this point, but Rashawn Holmes has seen the court in like maybe one game in the last 9 or 8. And that just kind of tells you where they're at with the group. It's not even about Rashawn Holmes. It's about the group that's on the court. But I think it does bring us to the conversation, like what is missing? How do they get it? Where do they get it? What does it take to get it? And like, how much can that push them forward? Because, you know, a week ago, a month ago, we're looking at this team as someone that could potentially like be fighting for a 8, 9, 10 spot, right? Well, what if you actually catch lightning in a bottle? What if this team can actually compete for maybe a 5, 6, 7, 8? And that means that you start looking at your acquisitions differently, right? Like I would have been someone who would have said no to Jay Crowder because he's a rental player, and why bring in a rental player when you already have Harrison Barnes on a 1-year deal? But all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, what if that rental player is someone that can help you solidify yourself as something different than you are today? And I think Monty McNair's job is morphing as we're going through the season. But if you guys, again, if you were out there looking for a player that would help this team, clearly you watch Memphis and watching, God, who was it that tore them apart, that always tears them apart?
Desmond Bane?
No, this last game. Why am I drawing a blank on it?
Dylan Brooks? Are you talking about Memphis or are you talking about Atlanta?
No, Memphis. No,
Jaren Jackson.
No, well, okay, so Jaren Jackson is one thing, but you're not going to be able to go get a Jaren Jackson. That's just not going to happen because that's where, you know, he's a top 5 pick and they're building around him. It's Brandon Clark. Like this team my brain wouldn't work with Brandon Clark, who is, again, his parents actually live here in the lake where I live. But the Kings need a Brandon Clark, which is kind of like a different version or a better version of Chimezie Metu. It's kind of like what you would hoped that Rashawn Holmes could be for this team, but hasn't worked out. but how do you get that guy? And how do you like go out there and circle like 3 guys that could potentially work for this team and go get a player that kind of does that dirty work, the rebounds, the, efficient in the key, but also maybe blocks a few shots?
I mean, rim protection is the clear need and weakness for this team, but I don't mean to derail your question, but in my mind at this point of the season, I'm kind of more so make sure that you keep all of your strengths and just keep rolling with having a very good offense, and then get what you can on defense. Like if you're going to get an acquisition, I think it needs to be somebody that can fit within the flow of this free flowing offense and just a smart player, capable of making quick decisions and executing, and then make an impact on the defensive end. But like at this point in the season, I'm kind of more so focused on prove that this is real, because honestly, I still have a little bit of a question to that. I think that everything that we see on the offensive end looks sustainable, but this is like the first time I feel like confident using the word that they have in identity. So just make sure that that is 100% there. Keep your offense up, and then try to clean up aspects on defense with the roster that you have now.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to point to, Brenden, is I think when you're looking at this team and you're evaluating, it can change every 10 games. It could change every 5 games. So you really have to get 25 games in before you really try to determine what you are, because, injuries become a factor, all those things. So it's a bit fool's gold right now. This could be who they are, but it also may not be. You don't want to believe it yet because you need a bigger sample size. That being said, it's coming at against quality opposition. We've talked about how Sacramento of all teams has to benefit from a good start to the season. So this could be, everything kind of going well. That's great. How does this look around, when the unofficial start to the season, Christmas time comes around? So you're not far from it. You're about a month away. So I really feel like these are things that they're taking into consideration. What are your certainties that you know about this team? To me, I feel the certainty is they are a bad defensive team. That's not earth-shattering to anybody. But can you be 5 teams better than what you were last year? Can you be 7 teams better than what you were last year? Who knows? Because that could equate to wins and losses. Are you a top 10 offensive team? I think they are. I think they could be even better. Right now, they're showing to be like number 1. I don't know if I'm ready to say that yet. So it's.
They're not just number 1, Sean. They're like they were
right.
Historically number 1. They were like the greatest offensive rating team of all time in the NBA. But go ahead. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And to that point, maybe they are. I would doubt it, but maybe they are. You need to get a little bit more of a handful of certainties around this team before you start making some of those moves. And I'll say this, maybe it's just because they had played the Hawks tonight, but I was watching John Collins a lot, and I watched 3 or 4 Hawks games pretty closely already this year, and it just doesn't look good for them with someone like John Collins. And granted, he's someone that's already been kind of dangled out there as bait for teams, and certainly it's been a conversation that this team has had in the past. But I don't really know what to make of John Collins quite yet. It just doesn't seem like he's in the right situation for him. And who knows what that type of situation needs to be for him. And to be quite honest, I don't know that Sacramento is the best spot for him.
Okay, you know what? I was going to take it there as the business of basketball.
Okay.
No, and I'm going to take it there because Spencer here in the chat, he mentioned this before, like early before we started the show, that John Collins is a hard pass. And I was watching the game tonight, like sort of like Sean was, like, okay, what's going on here? And to be honest, I think I see a really, really difficult situation for John Collins where they're not running the pick and rolls they were doing before. And I mean, we're seeing it's kind of like with the Kings. Like the Kings stopped running pick and rolls, right? They're not running pick and rolls like 40% or 80% of the time like they were last year. all of a sudden John Collins is finding himself just like Clint Capella is. Clint Capella doesn't look right in that offense either. And someone brings up John Collins is underutilized. I think John Collins is underutilized, but is he $125 million worth underutilized for another team? And that's where you start to go, okay, can you really jump in at 24, 25, 26? And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I was kind of on the Ben Simmons. Like, hey, like, look, if you can get Ben Simmons for pennies on the dollar, if they're willing to take on bad contracts, if they're willing to take on, expiring contracts and not require first round picks for Ben Simmons, then sure, I'll take him. Then I watched him play and I'm like, oh no, 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 no. I was wrong. No, that's my bad. Like I'm not touching Ben Simmons.
He's playing kind of well.
Well, yeah, but let someone else
Finally.
figure out if he can figure out who he is as a person. That's something that I think like a different team that's, again, trying to get into the 10th seed might be looking for. But when you're looking at like trying to take another leap, I'm still not off of John Collins, but I wasn't horribly impressed. And at the same time, I just thought they're so guard heavy, and the Kings are guard heavy, but not in that way. The Kings still move the ball. So John Collins, yes or no? I guess is sort of where I'm at.
I mean, of course, it depends what the Kings are giving up, but I don't love the idea of John Collins. I can definitely be talked into it. I think he's a good play finisher. I think he's a lot better shooter than obviously what we saw tonight when he went 0 of 7 from 3. He's shown that he's a pretty good shooter throughout the course of his career. He's a good finisher as well. I don't know that he's a guy to play like in this 0.5 offense of making decisions in 0.5 seconds. Like a lot of these guys are like Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk. I think one of the underrated aspects have been that like they're setting really good screens within the flow of this offense. And I don't know how much I've seen that from Collins, and then getting a ball and making quick decisions. And defensively, I've never fully bought into the idea of Collins as a rim protector. And maybe I just am not fully up to date on some of the progress that I know he made in that aspect last year. But I'm not fully sold there. And when he still has 4 years left on his 5 years, $125 million contract, like I'm just a little hesitant. I'd look at like, is there a way that you can talk to Jeremy Grant this offseason? Can you look at PJ Washington from Charlotte? Like, I think there's other directions I would look first. John Collins, I could be talked into, but he's not near the top of my list, really.
You don't consider PJ Washington a rim protector either, though. You shouldn't.
No, but it's like similar to Collins. I think somewhat he can do that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because like I kind of look at Collins in the same way that I look at Keegan Murray as a shot blocker. Like I don't really expect it. Like will they block shots? Yeah, sure. Can they get you a block a game? Maybe a little bit over. Okay. But that's not really like the rim protector that the Kings need. But at the same time, that's an extreme talent. We talk about the fact that the Kings can't really put Malik Monk in the starting lineup, because if you put Malik Monk in the starting lineup, what does that do to your second unit? Well, if you have another guy that can go out and get buckets like that, and let's just be honest here, it doesn't matter how well Harrison Barnes is playing right now. You don't know if he'll be with the Sacramento Kings next year or not. So a 25, 26-year-old sort of Harrison Barnes level player, really, like you need to find those guys, even if it's at $25 million a year, which sounds like horrific right now. But when the salary cap goes up to 150 or 170 or 180, that doesn't look nearly as bad as it does maybe today. So I don't know. I think it would have to be like, what is it that it costs you? Could you give up expiring contracts? Because it sounds like that's what Atlanta's trying to do, is dump salary. But could you give up expiring contracts and pull the protection on the Kevin Huerter trade on that pick and make something work? So could you give up, again, like name those 3 players that add up? Rashawn Holmes, Alex Len, and another like a Terrence Davis, another $4 million player, and you get close to matching salary with John Collins, and then pull the protection and give up a 2014, or say, hey, we'll pull the protection on 2015, whatever it might be. But does that make sense? Or am I like, okay, that's crazy? Like,
I don't think, in my mind, I don't think it's necessarily crazy, but I just think it's they're clearly Atlanta, depending, like, being competitive team be damned, like they have to. They're not going to be a team that wants to be in luxury tax, and they have to move John Collins, and that's not something that I mean, he's the biggest beacon on the team that you have to basically move to get better. And if you're the Kings, I just don't think you're going to, blow out your budget to try to get him. I just don't think you're going to do everything it takes to get him, because even though he is a 6'11", possible rim protector type player, like, I just don't see him. I don't know if he can be a really good fit. Can you really run with this guy? Can you really, get other wing defenders around him and guard defenders around him? And how does that look? I'm not so sold that he's going to be the right fit for you. I think you can maybe do better elsewhere. But clearly it's a young player who has a ton of upside that can fit the overall arc of this team. Yeah. And I think that's what's almost more impressive. And he is in a very underutilized situation. But if you're bringing him here, you're going to utilize the crap out of him. And you have to totally adjust what you're doing based on bringing him in. So I do agree with the fact that you're looking beyond this year, because you bring in somebody, you almost need a better version of what Harrison Barnes is. You obviously need a better version of whatever your 3 will be going forward. So you have holes on the team, but you've been able to kind of play some patchwork a little bit and have a lot of guys that play ultimately multiple positions and who are capable of doing that. Can you sustain it? That's the question mark. But when you bring in somebody like Collins, you'll know you're filling an obvious need on this team, and it might not be the rim protector you might need, but he can certainly possibly play that role of a rim protector that can fit what you want to do. And how does that work? I don't know. I think for me, John Collins in this team with Sacramento, albeit a intriguing one, I think if he comes here, you all of a sudden have to adjust a bit dramatically in bringing a player like him in.
And I'll just say real quick, like, I think when you commit to Sabonis as your 5 and you're playing him 35 minutes a night, like, you're just not going to be a team that protects the rim. Like, I think that's what it is. I don't know how many 4s there are in the league that are being rim protectors by themselves. I think that if you get a 4 that doesn't protect the rim but is a good perimeter defender, then you don't have to deal with as much protecting the rim because you're containing the perimeter better. Like, I don't think that we need to be so keyed in on the Kings need rim protection. I think that there's other aspects you can look at, because, like I said, I think that when you're committing a Sabonis at the 5, there's a lot of advantages that gives you on the offensive end, but it just means you're not going to be a team that protects the rim.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the question too is, well, what if you had 2 guys that at your wings that could block like between 1 and 1.2 blocks per game that could help out with Sabonis and be weak side shot blockers that are going to play 30 plus minutes a night. I'm not talking about, like, again, like, people can bring up Alex Len or Nemias Queta. The problem that you have is that a shot blocker sitting on your bench, it doesn't really matter if he doesn't play any minutes. Like, you have no rim protection. So, like, could you have long athletic wings that could actually, block shots? And I think the one thing that I'll point out is I think that Collins is being underutilized. And I think in Sacramento's offense, number one, it's a spread offense, but it can be up and down. And he's a guy that can run. John Collins, for me, in all honesty, he's basically what you hoped that Marvin Bagley would be. That's what John Collins is. Now, like, whether that works out or not, I don't know in Sacramento. What you've always looked for in Sacramento is a running mate at the 4 for De'Aaron Fox. That's John Collins. So that's where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm intrigued. And then the other intriguing piece is if Keegan Murray can actually play the 3 and he can be your starting 3, or, you can have 2 forwards that includes Keegan Murray and John Collins going forward, then I think you could be dangerous. That those two could be really good together. As again, you're not going to get someone who's averaging 2 blocks a game, but can you get two guys together that are averaging 2 to 2.5 around Sabonis? And so I'm at least intrigued. I know the money's a lot, but if you could do it without damaging what you've already done, and you could do it just by manipulating the draft pick that you already gave up for Herter, which would actually act as like this magic pill that would not only give up that pick, but it would give value to that pick and then allow you to trade other picks down the road if you needed to. It would be intriguing to me. Because again, like the whole, you can't trade your 2023, 24, 25, 26, or 27 pick as of right now. If you made a deal like that and just gave up your 24, now you can trade your 26, 27, or 28 picks, and it frees you up to do other things. It just, to me, it does have some sort of like intrigue to me.
It's definitely interesting. I don't know that I feel like they need to make their big move right now, like this season. I think that if something presents itself, and to your point with the pick protections they already have with Atlanta and the Herter deal, it makes for some really interesting negotiations in a possible way to go about that. But I mean, Rashawn Holmes is the guy that obviously stands out. We'll see what happens with Harrison Barnes, but I think that there's a way you kind of naturally grow throughout the course of this season. There's a big value in getting a lot of these guys playoff experience, specifically De'Aaron Fox, Keegan Murray, Davion Mitchell, and some of those guys. And then you see what can happen this offseason. So I think that obviously if you can jump on something and it feels like good value, it makes sense to do that. John Collins fits the timeline. If I'm at the point where I'm probably going to trust the front office and talk myself into something, also because they have seemingly strong coaching staff that's been pretty good at optimizing their talent. So I totally could see a world where they feel like they have an opportunity to capitalize on something, but I'm not feeling like their next big swing to take another jump from here has to happen this season.
I agree with that. They don't have to take the big swing. While we're in here, Meg is here, right? And she's done some really interesting stuff, like breaking down the salary cap and like percentages and like doing some really incredible like pie chart stuff, which is cool. So I know that sounds that sounds strange, but it actually, it's really cool to see like what the impact of a player like this would be, like a $25 million player, because that's what you're talking about. And you're talking about trading, $11 million, 11, 12, and like 12.2 of Rashawn Holmes in a trade like that. But, to be honest, it's kind of intriguing, like how it works out and how you can map out the salary long term. So if you guys want to see any of that stuff, look at Meg. Meg, put your in the chat here. Put your Twitter handle so people can see some of the work that you've done on that, because I think it's interesting to look at it in like different ways in graph form. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Let's take questions from the audience really quick before we get out of here, because we all got to get ready for our Turkey Day, right?
Can I ask you a question?
Uh-oh.
What time do you start having your Thanksgiving meal, both of you? Because I have some thoughts.
Whenever
Brenden.
my mom tells me it's time to eat.
Which is typically like what?
I don't know.
I can map out my day for everyone.
Go for it.
There you go.
So I've said this before. I'm Czechoslovakian, so like my grandfather was full Czech, my mom is half, I'm a quarter, maybe a little bit more than a quarter. So my mom starts all holidays at like between 9 and 10 with kolaches, which are like a Danish that Czechoslovakian people make. And you see them a lot in like Texas and Oklahoma and around there, because there's a huge like influx of Czechoslovakian people when they actually like my grandparents moved to or my great grandparents moved to United States. So anyway, I start at 10 o'clock with kolaches if I show up on time, because I'm not usually on time. Me and my wife aren't on time. And then we kind of go with a bunch of snacks. I'll bring a cheese plate and salami and stuff. But our first Thanksgiving is at right around 2 o'clock. And it's got to be light, because then I have another Thanksgiving that's between 4 and 5. And that's at my in-laws' house. So we have this thing where we have to split up. We have to split our Thanksgivings, because my in-laws, they don't have, it's not a big family on that side, but my family's huge and my mom's house is small. And so she already has like our family coming, and then it becomes really difficult to add in. But then my dad joins us at my in-laws' house.
People may remember this from last year. If you're having Thanksgiving before dinner time, what is wrong with you? Why do people do that? Hey, James, you're going to have 2 Thanksgivings before it's even dinner time. Like 2 o'clock.
It's so
in the
long,
afternoon,
man. All
Why?
I want to do is watch the Lions lose again. That's all I want to do. I just want to sit there and watch the Lions lose in peace, and maybe watch the Cowboys blow something stupid.
It's for football, man.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thanksgiving is for football.
If you're eating, like, I just don't get why people eat so early. I don't understand it at all. I just don't. And I get people will try to people have to travel. No, you don't. Even if you do, who cares? Like, you make it work. You don't need to eat at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What is, seriously?
Sean's nightmares are rainy Thanksgiving days that start at 1 p.m.
rainy Thanksgiving days. That's right. You just look out, Sean. You can just see Sean with like a tear in his eye. Oh, it's raining.
Like, people know what dinner. If you eat a little earlier, sure, but don't go before 5 o'clock. Why? Why would you do that?
We have a policy that we won't travel on Christmas, so that's why we go through this like rigmarole for Thanksgiving. It is what it is. Like I when we've had our oldest, he's 19. When we had him, we told everyone, hey, look, we're not going to travel for Christmas. So we'll host Christmas every year. We'll host Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And so I have to break it up again. So Christmas Eve is like my family, and Christmas Day is my in-laws and then my dad. So I break all of the Christmases up. But I won't leave the house, and I'll be here all day long wearing like Buddy the Elf costume.
As you do. Rob W. had my favorite comment of the night, by the way.
I missed it.
Brenden and his beer, and how many hey misters did it take before someone bought him a beer. That was outstanding. That's so great.
It was a pretty good one. We need questions from the chat, by the way.
Yeah, where's the questions from the chat? What do you guys got for us?
Pick it up, people.
What's our next movie we have to assign Brenden now that he's situated in his new palatial estate?
I can finish Silence of the Lambs this week. I will write that down right here.
Will you start from the beginning?
I will start from the beginning.
Okay.
I didn't get far in, so I will start from the beginning for sure.
Okay, so I think the biggest question facing us right now, so I get in the holiday spirit. So when it comes to Halloween, we usually watch like every Halloween movie, not like the scary, crazy stuff, but all the Halloween fun stuff.
What do you mean scary, crazy stuff?
Well, we don't get into like Halloween, the movie. We get into like
It's a good one.
There's so many Halloween spectacular movies that we get into as family. But then Christmas, we also I'm a huge like Christmas Vacation, Buddy the Elf, Elf.
What's your favorite color, James?
Christmas Story. What's your favorite color? Anyway, so yeah, I get into all of those, but I think the question that we'll have to ask Brenden, number one, have you seen Die Hard? And number two, is it a Christmas movie?
I don't think I've seen Die Hard.
God,
I think I've seen clips of Die Hard, but I don't think I've seen Die Hard. But I know damn well it is not a Christmas movie.
No, you're wrong on both accounts.
It's a Christmas movie!
On like a technicality.
What do you mean? It's a Christmas movie.
Isn't it just like... No.
Why is Jason asking me thoughts on the World Cup? Are you out of your mind? Do you?
You could ask me thoughts on the World Cup. I would tell you.
It's on our station. I have zero participation because I hate soccer. I don't care. I root for soccer. Like I'll go Republic, let them do their thing, and we'll cover it. But someone had to actually try to entice me because it was ambiance and alcohol and hey, you want to go watch the World Cup at Zocalo? I'm like, no, I don't.
Oh damn, Zocalo.
I've done that. But no, I didn't want to go see soccer. No.
Sorry. Okay, so I'll just because
I don't even know what the Ronaldo situation is. What is that?
Okay, so the Ronaldo situation, I got to be honest, Brian. Like, I'm kind of happy for both sides, but watching Ronaldo has just been such a disappointment. He just doesn't have it anymore, and I feel bad for him. But like figure it out. So basically, Sean, he and Man U decided to mutually part ways, which was
I knew that.
Yeah. So that's the situation where he's no longer going to be at Man U. My son is a huge Man U fan, so we watch Man U all the time. And he's a big Man U fan because his first soccer coach was a big Man U fan. But yeah.
What are his feelings on Ronaldo?
I thought Ronaldo throughout his career has been incredible. I thought this year, he pouted all the time.
Right, I refused to check into a game, right?
Well, it's not only that, but he would get so upset because he didn't score a goal, but then he wouldn't get back. So he would sit there and pout and walk back. Well, in soccer, a lot of times what happens is you get the ball right back, and then if a guy's offsides, you have to wait for him to get back on sides. And so it becomes like this horrible thing, which I dealt with on occasion with when I coached soccer, like getting kids who pouted every time they missed a goal. And then the ball gets right back and you're offsides and we can't do anything because you're standing there. That's what it felt like with Ronaldo. I was dealing with like a U13 kid who just was pouting the whole time. So it was a bummer to watch because he just really wasn't that good. So anyway, we can move on from Ronaldo talk.
No, I didn't tank the MLS. I love that question that comment from Ellis, but I know I want the MLS in Sacramento, man. I think that it's more stuff, more sports to cover, and
yeah,
I'm all for it. Just because I take my personal biases aside, and yes, I would root for the USA in this World Cup for sure, both women and men and all that. But
if you watched a single game,
I just don't know that I'd spend much time watching it.
I did watch the disappointing U.S. Draw in the first game. That's a good question, Sean. Aaron Judge to San Francisco?
I sure hope so. Let's make this happen.
So people out there who don't know this, Frankie Cardicelli from 1140. I don't even know what they're calling themselves, but I'm not even going to try at this point. They keep changing their name. I don't know what that like.
You better not give him credit for my question, by the way.
I'll just say this. It was your question, but
it was
I don't know how many polos you have to have with different names on your shirt. Anyway, the question that Sean asked to Kevin Herter, who is from New York and is a huge Yankee fan.
Big Yankee fan.
Was what'd you say? Something horrific?
I said, as a Yankee fan, do you think you're going to get Aaron Judge? Do you want to keep Aaron Judge? And he said there was no doubt. And he's like, all in. He's like, give him whatever it takes.
Yeah, he's going to the Giants. I don't think. Did you see they rolled out Rich Aurelia? I don't even know where they found Rich Aurelia. What is Rich Aurelia doing?
Richie's still on the telecast. He's an analyst.
He's still milking it. Okay.
Well, he's a handsome man. I mean, and he's a former player. Come on now, Rich Aurelia is doing his thing. Plus, if you remember, Aaron Judge, as someone pointed out, was a Giants fan, dire Giants fan. All you got to do is just bring Barry Bonds out there, put Willie Mays on a video phone or something. You're gonna be fine. Willie's up there, so
Tobe, who's in the chat, I don't want Judge in Oakland. That would just be horrific to get Aaron Judge and then watch him move to Las Vegas.
They'll totally pay for him.
That's a situation, James, you will not have to worry about.
No. I mean, even if you paid him $100 million a year, your payroll would still be like $108 million. I mean, that would just be sad and a bummer. We haven't got a bunch of Kings questions in here, but yeah, we've been just rattling off. I think Aaron Judge is going to to the Giants. Like,
Okay,
I don't care if I jinx you or not. I think that's where he's going.
I was just want you to say the Dodgers. That was.
Oh,
gonna
no.
be,
Like, he can't do that. Like, what kind of shameful act would that be?
I mean, he could. They just
Yeah.
cleared up $100 million. They could make it happen. And
Yeah.
I would be an insufferable prick even more than I already am. It would be horrible.
Oh.
I have seen Bad Santa, by the way. Almir here has asked about 10 times.
You've seen it?
I have seen Bad Santa, yes.
See part two?
Hilarious.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Have you seen Home Alone?
Yes.
Home Alone 2?
Maybe?
Have you seen Christmas Story?
You have a lot of holes in what you like. You don't.
My memory is horrible.
Yeah, it's just movies.
Either his
man.
memory's horrible or he grew up in a cardboard box somewhere without a TV.
It could be a combination of both.
Okay.
All right, so that was the movie you assigned. So whatever, if Silence of the Lambs, if that's what you're gonna do, what's something that James should watch that he hasn't, because he's seen everything.
You're asking me?
You don't see.
Yeah, I'm not one to recommend movies.
Tell him to. I mean, you're not even into music, are you?
I am into music. I don't think that James and I are going to listen to the same music, though.
Why? Then we could change that. James is willing to change.
I don't know if we can.
I don't know. Probably not. I don't listen to a ton of music. Jason, am I gonna watch the new Christmas Story? I am gonna watch a new Christmas Story. They brought Ralphie back. They got his brother back. The dad passed away a long time ago. The mom is still alive, but I don't think she's back for it. They also brought back the kid who sticks his tongue to the pole. And they also brought back the kid that he beats on, the bully kid. And I don't know why I'm forgetting all these names right now. But yes.
Brendan probably hasn't seen that.
No clue.
Christmas Story? You'll shoot your eye out. You haven't seen Christmas Story with Ralphie?
If you just switch it to TNT a week before Christmas, it'll be on 24/7.
Yeah, it literally plays like nonstop. You know what? I love Christmas movie, and I love that. Like, if you guys watch the Netflix, the making, what is it? The making of Elf, but they have the movies that made us. It's so good. Like all of the things that happen. Yeah.
I was hoping no chance. I was hoping a lot of those, like the movies that made us, they don't actually have a lot of the stars that like, I was hoping you'd hear from like a Will Ferrell or somebody like that. And it was.
Yeah, but you and I both know what it would be like to try to make the 2002 Sacramento Kings story and get Chris Webber. Like, you wouldn't get Chris, you'd get everyone else.
I would.
Well, you would, because you would maybe,
And I have.
but you
I
would
have.
still have to
Like
pay.
Sean.
You would still have to pay for it, Sean. You know
I
you
wouldn't pay
would.
for it. I wouldn't have to pay for Webb. I wouldn't have to.
Sean's
I
like,
just
you know
have to.
who I am?
I just have to really sell it to him.
All right.
Yeah.
I
It's a
think-
hard sell. That's what it is.
We've run this thing dry, I think. But I'll say this. Like, look, the Sacramento Kings lost a game. They just won seven in a row. So they've now won 7 out of 8, and I think it's much better than that if you break it down. This has been a really, really good run for the Sacramento Kings. So everyone shouldn't lose their love for what's happening here. The beam will get lit. It may not be this next game on Friday. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't be early next week. We'll have to see how they do against Phoenix. And what do we got? We've got Indiana coming in. Does Tyrese Haliburton get booed or no?
No
Did we
way.
discuss this last time?
No way.
You shouldn't.
I don't think so.
I thought the Bagley booing was a little over the top.
That was brutal, wasn't it?
That was pretty shitty. And I don't think Tyrese Haliburton should not be booed.
Buddy?
Why? Why would you even? I know why some people will boo Buddy. I just think it's, again, and maybe it's me. Look, this is not an Olden Polynice situation. These are not people that thrashed your organization when they left, or even while they were here. Certainly Marvin didn't do himself any favors. His dad is somebody different that you could absolutely do what you want. But yeah, man, I just for either one of those people that think that they're going to do better outside of Sacramento, more power to them. I just don't see how that gets you booed, but I don't know, man. Buddy Hield was a pretty good teammate that tried to do way too much sometimes, and
do more.
Yeah.
No, do less.
Do less. Just shoot the ball.
No. Okay, you gotta do more. Oh
He-
no, less.
Don't do that much. Do less.
No,
Yeah,
my bad.
that's
great
too
movie.
much.
Great movie. You got to do
Great
more than that.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah.
Brennan has no idea what we're
He
talking
has
about.
no idea what
Oh,
movie
see,
that
that's
is.
a good one. You could
It
watch
is a good
that.
I know the name.
You'll
but
watch all of that. That's a fun one. Yeah, that
you
one's
say
got
so.
some. That one's got some. Well, maybe because you weren't into There's Something About Mary, but that's a good one. Yeah, I mean,
Tyrese, by the way, loves Sacramento. I got to put that out there. Like, he absolutely loves the city. He does not have great feelings towards the organization, but he shouldn't.
No.
And if you can compartmentalize that and be a player and say, hey, you know, I didn't expect to be traded, and you want to be, you know, kind of hurt by being traded, that's fine. This is a business. He didn't expect to be traded, and he was absolutely just devastated. That being said, I don't disagree that this will probably be one of the best things that ever happened to him, especially given the situation that he had with De'Aaron Fox. Tyrese is going to be fine no matter where he goes. So, but he absolutely loves the city, loved the fan base. He knew exactly what he's what are you laughing at?
I'm
Meg
laughing at
saying-
Meg.
Yes, it's a great idea. Let Tyrese light the beam.
Yeah.
That would just mean that the Kings won, though. Yeah. And I'm excited. Brennan, are you going to go say hi to Tyrese? And
I'm gonna ask Rick Carlisle why Tyrese is just a shit defender, and we'll see how it goes.
there we go.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Rick Carlisle will give you a good answer. Awesome. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this thing up. Let's start with Brendan. Brendan, do you have any final thoughts?
I will say I got to talk to Luke Laux the other day, who did a lot of work with De'Aaron Fox and his shooting, which we've seen a lot of growth in throughout the course of the season, and planning on dropping that article either tomorrow or potentially the day after, figuring that out. So quick little plug. Just stay on the lookout for that. I'm excited for that one.
Sean, what do you got?
Do not eat Thanksgiving before 5 o'clock. That's
so
just,
random.
I don't get it, man.
Do you have the same beliefs on Christmas Day?
Yeah, man. Why? Anytime. It's dinner. Is it a dinner or is it a lunch? What are you doing? Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner. Now, look, if there's people who have to work late shift, graveyard stuff, I get it. That's where you alter your meal. I'm talking about the idiots that just, hey, we're just going to eat early just because that's what we. No, why? Why? And by the way, they're in my family too, so that might be a little triggering for me. They want to eat at like 2 o'clock. I'm like, you're out of your freaking mind.
I'm going to guess that Sean doesn't cook any of this stuff.
I actually have. I will not be this time.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Do
don't.
you have
Dude, they don't want me. They don't want me doing anything. Trust me.
I can't wait for Christmas. Christmas Day, I make prime rib. I actually go and I get like a gigantic 7-rack prime rib and I slow cook it and
I watch basketball all day.
oh, okay, there we go.
No
okay,
basketball on Thanksgiving though.
No.
But you will have, if you're into this sort of thing, you've got a lot of high school football championships coming up. Folsom and Oak Ridge, Division I. That'll be on Friday night. I'll be there. That's going to be at Sac City. So there's a lot of high school football season winding down, and I'm glad because it gets really fun around this time.
All right. Okay. Final thoughts from James. Enjoy your friends and family. Thanksgiving is it's a day that I think people just forget that it's about thanking everyone for the cool things that have happened and the cool things that are around you and just being thankful in general for having loved ones. We just got through a really crappy pandemic. A lot of people are getting sick right now because they haven't had their immune systems built up like normal. So just be thankful. Be thankful that the Sacramento Kings are 10-7. Like, is that what they are? I think they are 10-7. 10-7.
9 of their last 12.
Thanksgiving.
Be thankful.
Be thankful that there's a beam. Be thankful that we have headband her and Malik Monk and his stupid Band-Aid to talk about. I'll go full De'Aaron Fox, a stupid Band-Aid. But yeah, like I would say, like, give in to what's happening here, because I think it's really cool. And again, we don't get paid by the Kings for saying this, but if I think, like, go get yourself some tickets, because this team is fun, and people are jumping on this bandwagon like crazy, and you're gonna get like blocked out of going to games. So go jump on board and get yourself some tickets and experience it, because what we've seen at Golden One Center the last couple of games is absolutely off the hook phenomenal. It is so much fun to go to when the fans are rocking and we start hearing the Light the Beam chants and everything else. So that would be my be thankful, because, like, look, we're all here. Somehow we survived this mess, and we're all here to talk Kings basketball one more time. So I don't know.
By the way, I saw that you mentioned tickets. I was telling some friends and family of mine that they had their Black Friday special is like all week. So all their tickets for remaining games are half off. So
the what?
Yeah.
Okay. So there it is. Yeah. I think it's spectacular. Okay.
My mom went to her first game the other day, and who knows how long, and not even a huge basketball fan, but was like, man, that building was a blast to be there for. And that was a 3 p.m. Sunday game against the worst team in the league. So.
Hold on, your mom was there and I didn't get to meet her?
Yeah, what's the
true.
hell?
Yeah.
What the hell,
I
Brenden?
tried to, but both of you guys just totally ignored me like you always do. So.
Oh,
Well,
my goodness.
That's cap. First of all.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I would have completely chastised your mom for your
Yeah,
lack
'cause
of
I'd be
movie
like-
knowledge.
I'd be like,
Sean
hey,
and I would have
why
had to
did-
pull her aside and like, what did you do to this kid?
And you wonder why I didn't introduce you.
Did she get a cookie? Good question, Meg. Did she get a cookie?
She did not. She did
Oh
not.
man.
I don't know
Did you
if
get
my
her
mom would've
a
wanted
plain
cookie.
hot dog? She'd probably slap you with it. I bet your mom doesn't eat plain hot dogs.
Did you raw dog your mom?
Whoa.
That's what Sean was asking
Whoa.
right there.
No, it was not. Whoa.
Sometimes you just have to give someone the lob and they'll take it from there.
Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
Did you guys see who I got to? Did you guys see who I got to meet over the weekend?
No. Oh, Dusty? Well, I mean,
Well,
you know
no,
Dusty.
I know Dusty, but no, the great Whitney Cummings. She was in town and went over there. If you're not familiar
Punchline
with
is
her,
amazing.
Netflix. Daryl Hammond's there this weekend. I might try to go, but Whitney Cummings is amazing. If you haven't seen her very raunchy stand up, it's fantastic. So, I think her and I would make a phenomenal couple. By the way.
Oh. Well, you and
You
Rihanna
can-
and her.
Yeah, but you can check out the Instagram photo that was actually taken by another female who might have been mad that she was so happy to see me. So anyway,
All
go
right.
check it out. It was
All
good.
right. All right. Well, I think we're going to kill this thing. So
too bad.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. If you're still watching, give us a thumbs up.
Why would you?
Subscribe. Sorry if we offended anyone with hot dog talk at the Kings Beat, because that lit up last week, right? But watch your Christmas movies. Hug your family, bring a bottle of wine, have a good time, enjoy the holidays. It feels like we're kind of at a point where you can actually socialize again and do all that stuff. Don't talk politics. Avoid that like the plague. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself. Watch the Lions get beat because that's what it's like, a Thanksgiving tradition for everyone. Although pull for DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams because they're on my fantasy team. Yeah. And I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. And so for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, your Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you next week.
I can't believe you.